Let's return to our earlier story, the fallout from the indictments by Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia collusion probe. Speculation is mounting that this could be part of a much bigger strategy. Facing up to 15 years in prison if found guilty, the FBI will now be hoping both Manafort and Robert Gates will be willing to cooperate and provide information that could lead to further indictments. Bobby Chacon is a retired FBI special agent. We spoke to him a little earlier and he said the indictment of Manafort was the most significant development today.
Well, I think the most serious from a legal standpoint and from an investigative standpoint is the case against Manafort, because Manafort is the closest of the three to the president. And so if the aim is to look at possible collusion with the current administration during last year's campaign with the Russians, then Manafort would certainly be seen as the most important of the three people who are charged today.
Donald Trump, of course, has been dismissive of these charges, saying that these issues were many years ago before he ran for president. Does that mean he's off the hook, though?
He states facts. So factually, he's right that the charges today do not have to do with last year's election. These are charges that were looked at as far back as 2014, and Manafort's dealing with some entities in Eastern Europe and him not claiming status as a foreign agent. So those things have been around. However, as an investigator, we know you always go after people down the ladder, and you try to get them to cooperate, and you get them on other charges. And so that's what they've done with Manafort. They've hit him with other charges, and they're trying to probably pitch him, what we call pitch him, to cooperate against other people that are higher up in the food chain.
Well, give us, from your experience, a sense of what investigators are now going to do in terms of working with Manafort and his lawyers.
So my theory is that they've already had some discussions with him prior to the indictment. So you approach a subject like this and ask them, or you feel them out to see if they're willing to cooperate. And you say, look, if you don't start helping us or cooperate, we're going to indict you. And then they can say, okay, well, go ahead and indict me. And so then you indict them. And now his lawyers have a much better idea of the case that the government has against him. Up until now, it was just rumor. And they can have a decent idea based on the things that they seized from Manafort's home in July during the search warrant and other things. But now they've got the indictment in front of them. Now his lawyers know exactly the strength of the government's case against him. And now they can make a better informed decision about whether they want to advise him to cooperate with the government.
And Bobby, do you think the case is strong enough that his lawyers would advise him to cooperate with the government?
That's going to be a tough issue for him. I mean, I think there's more than the legalities involved in it. There's personal loyalties. There's power structures in Washington that are at work. So I think that, he's going to look at this case, but this might not be the only charges against him. They may allow him, as I've done in the past, allow a subject to plead to a certain set of charges and in return for his cooperation not charge him with additional things. So this is just the beginning for Manafort. If he doesn't cooperate with this, then he's still a subject in the ongoing investigation of the collusion case with the Russians. And so there may be more charges against him in the future. So those are things he has to balance as he's considering any potential offers from the government.
And how significant is it that Mueller is also looking at state charges against Manafort, not just federal charges?
Well, they're working with both, but the significance of the state charges come in the fact that Trump, as the president, has the authority to pardon anybody with respect to federal charges against them. He does not have that same power with state charges. So Mueller's team is really focused on the federal charges, but in addition, they're working with the New York State Attorney General's office, Eric Schneiderman's office, on some New York State charges that can be brought on the state level against Manafort, and Trump does not have the power to pardon Manafort for any of those crimes. And that's the significance of working with the state.
Let's talk George Papadopoulos for a moment. Of course, he's much lower down the food chain, as you suggested earlier, but the fact that he is cooperating with investigators, could that not be quite significant in joining the dots to Trump?
I believe so, although he's a young guy, and I have some questions as to exactly how involved he was. I think he was overselling his ability to influence some Russian people with his connections through some of his professors. And the fact is that he's been cooperating since midsummer, July, and that kind of thing. And so I would have expected, if his cooperation was very fruitful, that today's indictment would have contained more things against Manafort. But that's yet to be seen. It is significant that he's been cooperating since July. Nobody knew it, so his cooperation could have gotten them more evidence, and they still might be sitting on some of that. But I'm not quite sold on Papadopoulos' value yet, because I think he's a young guy who was trying to curry favor with people in the Trump campaign. I think he may have oversold his vision. I think he wanted a seat at the big table, and he was using some of his professors to get there. But I'm not quite there yet to put a big value on him yet. Could be, but I don't know yet.
And how concerned are you that senior Republicans, people like Steve Bannon, are marshalling around Donald Trump, even potentially trying to go after Mueller and even sack him?
I'm not concerned about that, and I've said this from the beginning when Director Mueller was put in charge. I mean, he's a man of impeccable integrity. These are just political posturing games that go on inside the Beltway whenever there are these politically sensitive investigations like there were against Hillary Clinton and others in the past. I mean, this is political posturing. It would be political suicide, to even attempt to get rid of Robert Mueller in this investigation. The man is, he was the FBI director for 12 years. I worked for him for those 12 years. He has the utmost of integrity and respect inside of Washington and outside. Those that are trying to attack him on some of these things are much more politically motivated than actually looking at the law and the investigation.
Well, fascinating to keep an eye on. Bobby, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me anytime.